Let's return back to Genghis Khan's life and the end of it. How and where did he die?
After conquering the Khwarezm Empire in Central Asia, Genghis Khan returned, and then they had a great, what they called Nadam, a great celebration that went on for a whole summer just about. And they had so much wealth to distribute to everybody, and everybody is being given all kinds of things, for what they have done, and including the people who helped saved him when he was in the kank and the ox yoke. They were rewarded with, everybody was rewarded. It was a great time. But the first place he had attacked outside was the Tangut nation, and they had sworn allegiance to him. And then when he went off to the Middle East, they refused to send troops. He didn't forget that. He's going back to the Tangut nation, and he's going to conquer them again. As he was crossing the Gobi, which takes a while, and you're crossing the Gobi, he was distracted a little bit by hunting the hulan, which is we say the wild ass, or I used to say wild horse. It sounds a little better. But the hulan of the Gobi. He was off hunting hulan. He fell from his horse, and he injured his leg very badly. And he seemed to decline from that point. And it took some number of months before August of 1227. He was very much near the end of life. You can read online the exact date, and it's all very specific, but the truth is we don't know exactly which day he died in that time, because one of his wives was running the camp, and they were keeping it secret until the defeat of the Tangut was completed. And the Tangut offered all kinds of things for the Mongols to go away again the second time. And Genghis Khan had told his family, no, accept nothing. And then when they surrender, you kill the royal family, kill them all. So that the idea, they were Buddhist people. The Tanguts were Buddhists. And the idea was usually you can be reborn into your own family. But he said, no, you kill off the whole family so they can't be reborn. So he died there.
How was his successor chosen?
Oh, the succession issue was always difficult. He did not have the right to appoint a successor. That was not the Mongol way. He could nominate somebody. So before he set off for the Middle Eastern campaign, one of his wives said to him, even the biggest tree falls. You've got to make a plan and talk to your sons about the future. So he did. He called the sons together. So this is Zuch, the oldest boy who was born while the father was allied with his Anda, Jamuk, and he was named Visitor, Zuch. And then the next one was Chagadai, and the next one was Okode, and the next one was Tula, the father of Kublai Khan, but he was still alive at this point. So all four of them came. So Genghis Khan explained to them he wanted to talk about the succession and to get some consensus from them about the succession. And so he said, the Mongols always call on people to speak by order of age. They also serve tea or food, anything by order of age. It's always done that way from then till now. So he called first on Zuch. And he said, what do you say, Zuch? Genghis Khan favored Zuch. This is the one who was questionable paternity, but he always favored him. Mm-hmm. The youngest Tulu was too hot-headed. Ogode was a heavy drinker. Chagade was very rigid about the law of the Mongols and all, but he seemed to favor Zuch as a more reasonable, good warrior, but reasonable person. But he called on Zuch, my son, speak. Chagade, the second one, who believed in Mongol law, supposedly, he jumped up and he said, this is when he accused his father of all kinds of, he said, how can you call on this Merkit bastard? If you call on him first, that means you want him to be the great Khan. He should not be the great Khan of the Mongol Empire. It is his Mongol Empire now. On and on, you can imagine kind of scene. Well, Genghis Khan is the greatest ruler in the world. He's sitting there being lectured by his second son, and this is when he gave that impassioned speech to his. Now, actually, the way the secret history, it makes it look like it was his assistant speaker who said it, because very often the great power doesn't say the words directly. They let somebody else say them for them, have a spokesperson. But anyway, I think it was his words, and I think he said them on that day. That's what I think. Of this business of, you do not know, you were not there. The stars were moving in the sky, heaven was turning around, the earth was turning over. You do not know who loved whom. You do not know who your mother loved. You do not know what your mother did. And if I say he is my son, who are you to say he is not my son?
By the way, pretty just really high integrity, really respectable
Yes.
to do that. To have that respect and honor his wife in this way
Yes.
and his son in
Yes.
this way is really powerful.
I believe that, I don't know if she was alive at this point or not. We do not have the death recorded. Mongols are not good at recording death. They usually just say somebody finished their age, or they have some euphemism for it. But he made that impassioned speech, and Sagade had to submit. And he said, yes, you are our father, and we accept what you say. But a deer shot with words cannot be loaded on a horse. A deer shot with words cannot be eaten. So Genghis Khan knew. So he said to the boys, I mean, these are middle-aged men, they're not boys, but he said to the men, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? And he said, I don't favor Sagade because of his attitude and the situation. And Talo is still hot-headed, and he actually ended up being drunk and dying early. So, but the other guys, they said, well, a good day. They chose him because he was the most generous and the bon vivant, and he was for every party and drinking every time. And yeah, one time, Shigi Hutuk, the great judge who wrote The Secret History, Shigi Hutuk was sleeping in a cart one time for whatever reason. I don't know what. I think he also had passed out drunk, perhaps. But Agade came out drunk and grabbed him up and pulled him back into the party. And Agade was a party guy. And so he was chosen as the next great Han of the Mongol Empire. But fortunately, there was sort of a plan B, and that Genghis Khan had set up very powerful women, his daughters, but also he had chosen wives for each of his sons, very, very capable wives. And for Agade, he had a wife who wasn't even his first wife. The first wife would usually be somebody closer by a certain clan or something. But he had a very intelligent woman named Dorjin. And then she was more or less ruling in his last few years. And then after he died, she ruled empire in her own name. She was the ruler of the greatest empire in the world ever ruled by a woman.
It's incredible. The genius of Genghis to set it up that way.
Yes.
And to not, there's probably very widespread discrimination of women at that time. And to have not care about any of that and just making the right decision.
Yes.
For what it will keep the empire together.
And Dorjin was, actually there was peace. She stopped all campaigns. There was peace during her time. And the women, such as Dorjin and others, were extremely into economics and trade and running these. They had these private corporations called Ortok. She was running her Ortok and everything. So she became much more interested in the economics of the trade and running the empire. And it was a time of peace. And she recognized that peace was better for trade. It was better. And so it was a peaceful time. But like all of us, we have our weak points, and she favored a worthless son to become the successor. And none of the sons actually were great, but Agade had favored another. But anyway, she favored Guyuk, her son. And so she arranged to have him made the great emperor while she was still alive. And she had her primary minister was also a woman named Fatima from the Middle East. And unfortunately, Guyuk organized a purge of her court and killed off a lot of these people who had been supporting her. And a lot of them were Muslims. And he killed off a lot. And then he was going to march against the Golden Horde because they weren't supporting him. So he set off and he died. He was only in office for 18 months, and he was gone. And then his wife took over, Oglakamish. Unfortunately, she was not capable as her mother-in-law, Dorogen. Oglahamish was a bit greedy, and she didn't start any new wars, but she just kind of messed up things, and she didn't rule for too long. And this is why Kublai Khan's mother, Sorokhtani, was able to have a revolution. She united with the Golden Horde. She was on one end on China. She had northern China. The Golden Horde had Russia. The two of them united against the center, and they overthrew Oglhamish, and she put her son Mongkhan in, who was succeeded by Kublai Khan.
And we should say probably that, this whole succession by kin probably goes against the initial spirit of what Genghis Khan stood for.
Yes. Yes. In the end, he was a father, and he favored his sons, even knowing they were not so capable, and he had lost a grandson that he loved. But he organized it, though, as what we'd call today almost a corporation. All lands belong to everybody in the family, everybody. So Kublai Khan, that's why he had soldiers. There were Christian soldiers, Ossetian soldiers, and Kipchak soldiers. He had 10,000 of each come in. And then the Russians would own silk factories in China. The Ilkhanate would own silk factories and jade mines in China. The people in China, the Mongols, they would own villages in Persia and in Iran. So he organized it all. Everything was owned by the entire clan. Mm-hmm. It didn't last too long like that because of the divisions that developed. So the great Khan was primarily in charge of conquering and expanding the land so they had more lands to own. That was going to be the job. And Kublai Khan fulfilled it. Mongkhan, to some extent, fulfilled it. A good they did. Guik did not.
It was family ruling the land, all the different territories.
Yeah, and they weakened with every generation.
Yeah.
Every generation.